Naomi Washington stared at the contract in her trembling hands, her brown eyes widening as she read the most disturbing clause for the third time. The paper felt heavy, weighted with implications that made her stomach twist into knots. Clause 7.3. Under no circumstances shall the contracted wife reveal the true nature of this marriage arrangement to Elena Torres, regardless of her health status, recovery timeline, or any other factors. This confidentiality must be maintained even if Mrs. Elena Torres makes a complete recovery and lives for many years to come. The words blurred as tears threatened to spill. Naomi looked up at Cameron Torres, the devastatingly handsome millionaire sitting across from her in his glass-walled office. His dark hair was perfectly styled, his navy blue suit impeccable, but his brown eyes held a desperation that matched her own inner turmoil. "You want me to lie to your mother for the rest of her life?" Naomi's voice barely rose above a whisper. "Even if she gets completely better?" Cameron leaned forward, his hands clasped tightly on the mahogany desk. "My mother has been asking about grandchildren for years. She's convinced she'll die without seeing me married to someone who truly cares about family. The doctors say her heart condition is serious, but there's hope for recovery if she has something to live for. But this clause." Naomi pointed to the paper with a shaking finger. "You're asking me to deceive a woman who might live for decades. What if she wants to plan anniversary parties? What if she wants to babysit our fake children someday? What happens when she's 90 and still believing in this lie?" The fluorescent lights overhead cast harsh shadows across Cameron's face. Outside his 20th floor window, the city of Phoenix stretched endlessly under the bright Arizona sun. Naomi had never been in an office this luxurious, surrounded by leather furniture and expensive artwork, but the beauty of it all felt meaningless against the weight of what he was asking. "I know it sounds cruel," Cameron said, his voice strained. "But think about this. My mother is lying in a hospital bed right now, believing she might never see me truly happy. If this marriage gives her hope, if it helps her fight harder to recover, isn't that worth something?" Naomi's mind raced back to her own mother, Grace Washington, lying in a different hospital across town. The medical bills were crushing their family. Her job as a cardiac nurse paid well, but not well enough to cover experimental treatments their insurance wouldn't approve. The $500,000 Cameron was offering would change everything. "You're asking me to become a professional liar," Naomi said, standing up from the plush red chair. Her bright green scrubs felt out of place in this corporate environment, but she'd come straight from her shift. "What kind of person does that make me?" Cameron stood too, walking around the desk. He was tall, probably 6 feet 2, and when he looked at her with those intense brown eyes, Naomi felt something she didn't want to acknowledge. "It makes you someone who cares enough about both our mothers to make a sacrifice," he said softly. "Look, I've done my research on you, Naomi. You've been working double shifts for months to pay for your mother's cancer treatments. You volunteer at the children's ward on your days off. You're not doing this out of greed. You're doing it out of love." The truth of his words hit her like a physical blow. She was desperate and he knew it. But that didn't make the moral weight of his proposal any easier to bear. "What happens when 6 months are up?" she asked. "Do we get divorced while your mother watches? Do we fake a tragedy? How do you end a lie this big without breaking her heart anyway?" Cameron ran a hand through his hair, messing up the perfect styling. "I honestly don't know. I'm hoping that by then she'll be strong enough to handle whatever happens. Maybe we can say we realized we're better as friends. Maybe we can figure out a way to transition slowly." "Maybe isn't good enough," Naomi said firmly. "You're asking me to risk hurting a woman I've never even met, a woman who sounds like she deserves so much better than this deception." "She does deserve better," Cameron agreed, his voice breaking slightly. "She deserves a son who can fall in love naturally and give her the daughter-in-law she dreams about. But I can't be that son. I've tried, Naomi. I've dated, I've had relationships, but nothing sticks. I'm too focused on work, too afraid of letting people down. My mother is running out of time to see me settled, and I'm running out of ways to make her happy." Naomi looked at the contract again. The money would save her mother's life. But at what cost to her own soul? What would you do if someone offered you everything you needed to save your family, but asked you to lie to an innocent person for potentially the rest of their life? Let me know in the comments below, and don't forget to subscribe for more heart-wrenching stories that make you question what you'd sacrifice for love. "I need time to think," Naomi said finally. "Take all the time you need," Cameron replied. "But please remember that every day we wait is another day my mother spends believing she'll die before seeing me truly happy." As Naomi walked toward the elevator, the contract clutched in her hand, she realized that Cameron Torres had just presented her with the most impossible choice of her life. Save her own mother by potentially destroying someone else's heart, or watch her family fall apart while maintaining her integrity. The elevator doors closed, and Naomi saw her reflection in the polished steel. She looked like someone who was about to make a decision that would change everything, and the terrifying part was that she had no idea if it would be the right one. 3 days earlier, Naomi had been checking on patients in the cardiac intensive care unit when she first encountered Elena Torres. The older woman had been admitted with chest pains, her salt and pepper hair spread across the white hospital pillow, her olive-toned face etched with worry lines that spoke of years of stress. "Excuse me, nurse?" Elena had called out in accented English as Naomi passed her room. "Could you help me reach my purse? I want to show you pictures of my handsome son." Naomi had smiled and retrieved the small red handbag from the bedside table. Elena's eyes had lit up as she pulled out a leather wallet stuffed with photographs. "This is Cameron," Elena had said proudly, showing Naomi a professional headshot of a man in a charcoal suit. "He owns 3 hotels and 2 restaurants. Very successful, very smart. But you know what? He's 32 and still no wife. No children. I tell him, Cameron, money cannot keep you warm at night, money cannot give you a family to love." Naomi had nodded politely, accustomed to family members sharing their worries during hospital stays. But something about Elena's genuine concern for her son's happiness had touched her heart. "He's very handsome," Naomi had said honestly. "I'm sure he'll find the right person when the time is right." Elena had sighed deeply, her hand pressing against her chest. "That's what I used to think. But now, with my heart acting up, I worry I won't live to see him settled. It's silly maybe, but a mother wants to know her children will be loved and cared for." 2 days later, when Cameron had appeared in the hospital hallway looking frantic and worried, Naomi had immediately recognized him from the photographs. He'd been wearing dark blue jeans and a white button-down shirt, his usually perfect appearance slightly rumpled from rushing to get there. "How is she?" he'd asked Dr. Patricia James, Elena's cardiologist. "Is she going to be okay?" Dr. James, a composed African-American woman in her 40s, had explained that Elena's condition was serious but treatable. "Her heart is weak, but with proper care and reduced stress, she could have many good years ahead of her. The key is keeping her spirits up and giving her reasons to fight." That evening, as Naomi had finished her shift, she'd found Cameron sitting alone in the family waiting area. His head had been in his hands, his shoulders shaking slightly. The sight of this powerful, successful man looking so vulnerable had stopped her in her tracks. "Mr. Torres?" she'd said softly, sitting down in the blue plastic chair beside him. "Your mother is resting comfortably. Her vitals have improved since this morning." Cameron had looked up, his eyes red-rimmed with exhaustion. "Thank you. You're Naomi, right? My mother mentioned you. She said you were very kind to her." "She's a lovely woman," Naomi had replied. "She talks about you constantly. You can tell how proud she is." "And how worried," Cameron had added bitterly. "She keeps asking about my love life, about when I'm going to give her grandchildren. I keep telling her I'm focused on my career, but that just makes her worry more." Naomi had studied his face, seeing the genuine anguish there. "She loves you. That's not something to feel bad about." "I know," Cameron had said. "But what if loving me is what kills her? What if the stress of worrying about my future is making her heart condition worse?" It had been an unusual conversation to have with a stranger, but something about the quiet hospital atmosphere had made it feel natural. Naomi had found herself wanting to comfort this man who clearly adored his mother. "Have you considered that maybe she worries because she sees how lonely you are?" Naomi had asked gently. Sometimes parents can sense when their children aren't truly happy, even when those children think they're hiding it well. Cameron had looked at her with surprise. "You think I'm lonely?" "I think you're scared," Naomi had said honestly. "Scared of letting people get close enough to hurt you. But your mother sees that fear, and it worries her because she wants you to experience the kind of love she probably had with your father." That conversation had led to another the next night, and another the night after that. Cameron had started timing his visits to coincide with the end of Naomi's shifts. They talked about families, about dreams, about the pressure of taking care of aging parents while trying to build their own lives. It was during their 4th conversation that Cameron had mentioned his desperate idea. "What if I hired someone to marry me?" he'd said suddenly, staring out the hospital window at the city lights. "Just for a few months, just long enough to give my mother some peace." Naomi had almost laughed at the absurdity of it. "You can't be serious." "Why not?" Cameron had turned to face her. "People do business arrangements all the time. This would just be a different kind of contract." "Marriage isn't a business arrangement," Naomi had protested. It's supposed to be about love, about commitment, about building a life together. Says who? Cameron had challenged. Arranged marriages happen all over the world and many of them work out fine. This would just be temporary, just long enough to give my mother hope while she recovers. And what about the woman you'd be asking to do this? Naomi had asked. What about her feelings, her reputation, her future relationships? Cameron had been quiet for a long moment. I'd make sure she was compensated fairly for her time and the inconvenience. And I'd make sure she understood exactly what she was getting into from the beginning. Now, sitting in her small apartment 3 days later, Naomi stared at the contract that had made that impossible conversation real. Her mother, Grace, was sleeping in the next room, exhausted from another round of chemotherapy. The medical bills were piled on the kitchen table, each one a reminder of how desperately they needed help. Her phone buzzed with a text from Cameron. I know this is a lot to ask. But I believe you're the only person who could do this with the kindness and grace my mother deserves. Please consider it. Naomi looked at the framed photo on her coffee table, a picture of her and her mother at Grace's college graduation ceremony 15 years ago. Her mother had worked 3 jobs to put herself through nursing school, always emphasizing the importance of helping others and doing the right thing. But what was the right thing now? Let her mother die for the sake of a principle, or save her mother's life by deceiving someone else's? The answer, when it came to her, felt both wrong and inevitable at the same time. Naomi stood in the small bathroom adjacent to Elena's hospital room, staring at her reflection in the mirror. She wore a simple but elegant blue dress that Cameron had insisted on buying for the occasion. The color brought out her warm brown skin and complemented her natural hair, which she'd styled in soft curls that framed her face. In less than 10 minutes, she would become Mrs. Cameron Torres in a ceremony that meant nothing legally but everything emotionally to the woman lying in the bed beyond the door. Are you ready? Cameron's voice came softly through the bathroom door. He wore a navy suit with a crisp white shirt and silver tie, looking every inch the successful businessman he was. But Naomi could see the nervousness in his dark eyes when she opened the door. As ready as someone can be for this, she whispered back. They had spent the previous week working out the details of their arrangement. Naomi would move into Cameron's penthouse apartment to maintain the illusion, but she would have her own room and bathroom. They would attend family functions together and visit Elena regularly, but their personal lives would remain separate. The contract was clear. This was a business arrangement, nothing more. But standing there in her blue dress, about to lie to a sweet woman who had welcomed her like a daughter, Naomi felt anything but businesslike. Elena was sitting up in her hospital bed, her hair freshly styled by the hospital beautician Cameron had hired. She wore a soft pink nightgown and had insisted on applying lipstick for the occasion. Despite her illness, her eyes sparkled with joy. Mijo, she called to Cameron, bring your beautiful bride over here so I can see you both together. Dr. Patricia James stood to the side, having agreed to serve as their witness. She had expressed concerns about the stress of a wedding ceremony on Elena's heart, but Elena had insisted that this moment would give her more strength than any medicine. The hospital chaplain, an elderly man named Father Martinez, had arrived with a small bouquet of white roses for Naomi and a boutonniere for Cameron. He seemed genuinely moved by what he believed was a romantic bedside wedding. We are gathered here today, Father Martinez began, to unite Cameron and Naomi in the bonds of marriage, before God and in the presence of family. Naomi felt Cameron's hand take hers. His palm was warm but slightly damp with perspiration. She looked into his eyes and saw a flicker of something she couldn't identify. Gratitude, perhaps, or maybe just relief that this plan was actually working. Cameron, Father Martinez continued, do you take Naomi to be your wife, to love and cherish her in sickness and health, for richer or poorer, for as long as you both shall live? I do, Cameron said, his voice steady but quiet. And Naomi, do you take Cameron to be your husband, to love and honor him in sickness and health, for richer or poorer, for as long as you both shall live? The words stuck in Naomi's throat for a moment. Love and honor. For as long as they both shall live. The vows felt too real, too meaningful for what they were actually doing. I do, she managed to say. You may kiss the bride, Father Martinez announced. Naomi's heart pounded as Cameron leaned toward her. Their lips met in a gentle, brief kiss that was supposed to mean nothing but somehow sent electricity through her entire body. When they separated, she saw something in his eyes that mirrored what she was feeling. Confusion about whether this was still just pretend. Oh, my beautiful children, Elena sobbed happy tears from her bed. I am so happy, so grateful to see this day. Naomi, welcome to our family. You will be the daughter I always dreamed of having. The words hit Naomi like a physical blow. Elena's joy was so pure, so genuine, that Naomi felt sick with guilt. This woman was celebrating what she believed was her son's happiness, never knowing that it was all an elaborate lie designed to manipulate her emotions. But as Naomi looked at Elena's radiant face, she also saw something else. Color had returned to the older woman's cheeks, her breathing seemed easier, and her eyes were brighter than they had been since Naomi first met her. Dr. James stepped forward to check Elena's vital signs. "Your heart rate is actually better than it's been all week," she murmured, looking surprised. "Whatever this happiness is doing for you, Mrs. Torres, it's working better than any medication we've given you." Cameron squeezed Naomi's hand. "See," he whispered in her ear. "It's already helping." The next hour passed in a blur of photographs, well-wishes from hospital staff who had grown fond of Elena, and plans for Naomi to move into Cameron's apartment. Elena insisted on giving Naomi her own grandmother's wedding ring, a simple gold band with tiny diamonds that had been in the Torres family for 3 generations. "This ring has brought good luck to 4 Torres brides before you," Elena said, sliding it onto Naomi's finger with shaking hands. "May it bring you and Cameron many years of happiness and beautiful children." Naomi stared at the ring, feeling its weight on her finger like a chain. How could something so beautiful feel so wrong? Later that evening, as Cameron drove them to his penthouse in his silver BMW, the silence between them was heavy with unspoken thoughts. "Your mother is wonderful," Naomi said finally. "I can see why you wanted to make her happy." "She likes you," Cameron replied, keeping his eyes on the road. "I could tell immediately. She's usually much more reserved with new people, but she took to you right away." "That makes it worse," Naomi admitted. "She trusts me completely. She has no reason to think I would deceive her." Cameron pulled into the underground parking garage of a sleek glass building. "What we're doing is giving her hope and motivation to get better. The doctor said her improvement today was remarkable." "And what happens when she gets completely better and still expects us to be happily married?" Naomi asked as they rode the elevator to the 20th floor. "We'll figure that out when the time comes," Cameron said, but his voice lacked conviction. The penthouse apartment was stunning. Floor-to-ceiling windows offered a panoramic view of the Phoenix skyline, and the modern furniture was arranged perfectly around an open-concept living space. Everything was decorated in neutral tones with splashes of blue and green. "Your room is down that hallway," Cameron said, pointing to the left. "It has its own bathroom and a walk-in closet. I've already had some clothes delivered in your size, basic things to get you started." Naomi followed him down the hall to a beautifully appointed guest room. The bed was made with crisp white linens and a turquoise throw blanket. French doors opened onto a small balcony with a view of the mountains. "This is lovely," she said. "Thank you." "I want you to be comfortable here," Cameron replied. "This arrangement only works if we can both live with it." As he turned to leave, Naomi called out to him. "Cameron? Your mother's ring. Should I take it off when she's not around?" He paused in the doorway, looking back at her. The ring caught the light from the bedside lamp, sending tiny sparkles across the wall. "You should probably wear it all the time," he said quietly. "In case she visits unexpectedly or we run into people who know our families. It needs to look real." After he left, Naomi sat on the edge of the bed and looked at the ring again. For the next 6 months, she would wear this symbol of a marriage that didn't exist, living with a man she barely knew, pretending to love him for the sake of a woman who deserved so much better than their deception. But as she thought about Elena's improved vital signs and the joy on her face during the ceremony, Naomi had to admit that maybe Cameron was right. Maybe sometimes a beautiful lie could be more healing than an ugly truth. She just hoped they would be able to live with the consequences when everything finally came crashing down. The first morning in Cameron's penthouse began with the awkward realization that they had never discussed the practical details of sharing a living space. Naomi woke up at 6:30, her usual time for hospital shifts, and padded to the kitchen in her yellow cotton pajamas and robe. She found Cameron already there, dressed in workout clothes and drinking coffee from a large black mug. His dark hair was tousled from sleep, and he looked younger somehow, less intimidating than he did in his business suits. "Good morning," Naomi said carefully. "I hope I'm not intruding on your routine." "Not at all," Cameron replied, though his voice was formal and distant. "I usually go to the gym at 7, so the kitchen is all yours after that. There's coffee made, and feel free to use whatever you find in the refrigerator." "Thank you." Naomi poured herself coffee in a blue ceramic mug, grateful for the caffeine. "What time do you usually get home from work?" "It varies. Sometimes 6, sometimes much later." I travel frequently for business, so there might be days when I'm not here at all. Cameron checked his expensive watch. Speaking of which, I'll be in Los Angeles for the next 3 days. I've left my assistant's contact information on the counter in case you need anything. The thought of being alone in this huge apartment for 3 days was both relieving and unsettling. What should I tell your mother if she asks where you are? Business trip. She's used to it. Cameron rinsed his mug in the sink, his movements efficient and precise. I've arranged for a car service to take you to and from the hospital for your shifts. The driver's name is Robert and he'll be downstairs whenever you need him. That's not necessary, Naomi protested. I can take the bus like always. You're Mrs. Cameron Torres now, he said, and something in his tone made it sound less like consideration and more like an obligation. People will notice if my wife takes public transportation to work. After Cameron left for the gym, Naomi explored the apartment more thoroughly. The master bedroom was at the opposite end of the hall from hers, with a massive walk-in closet and a bathroom that could have doubled as a spa. The living room had built-in bookshelves filled with business journals and biographies of successful entrepreneurs, but she noticed a small section devoted to fiction, mostly mystery novels. The kitchen was a chef's dream, with high-end appliances and granite countertops. The refrigerator was practically empty except for expensive bottled water, some leftover takeout containers, and basic condiments. It was clear that Cameron didn't spend much time cooking for himself. Naomi's first shift at the hospital since the wedding felt strange. Several of her co-workers had heard about the sudden marriage and wanted details, but she found herself struggling to answer their questions without revealing too much. It happened pretty quickly, she told her friend Jessica, another cardiac nurse. We just knew we were right for each other. And he's really rich? Jessica asked with obvious envy. Girl, you landed yourself a Prince Charming. Money isn't everything, Naomi replied, which was true even if it was the primary reason she was in this situation. When she visited Elena's room during her lunch break, the older woman's face lit up with genuine happiness. Mi nieta nueva, Elena said, reaching for Naomi's hands. My new daughter. Come, sit with me and tell me everything about your first night as a married woman. Naomi felt heat rise in her cheeks. Elena, we don't need to discuss private matters. Of course, Elena laughed. But you look happy, Mija. I can see it in your eyes. Marriage suits you. Dr. James had mentioned during morning rounds that Elena's blood pressure had stabilized significantly since the wedding. Her appetite had returned, and she was asking about when she might be able to go home. The improvement was remarkable and undeniable. Cameron is traveling for business, Naomi said, settling into the bedside chair. He wanted me to tell you he'll call tonight to check on you. That boy works too much, Elena sighed. But now that he has you, maybe he'll learn to slow down and enjoy life. You have a calming influence on him, I can tell. What makes you say that? Naomi asked, curious despite herself. At your wedding, I watched his face when he looked at you. I have never seen him so peaceful. Usually, Cameron carries stress in his shoulders and his jaw. But yesterday, standing next to you, he looked like a man who had found what he was looking for. Naomi's heart did an unexpected flutter. She had been so focused on her own internal turmoil during the ceremony that she hadn't really studied Cameron's expressions. Your son is a good man, Naomi said, and was surprised to realize she meant it. See, he is. But he has been hurt before, you know. His last girlfriend, Patricia, she left him for a man with more money. Can you imagine? My Cameron wasn't rich enough for her. Elena's voice carried old anger and protective motherly instincts. I'm sorry, Naomi said softly. That must have been difficult for him. It made him afraid to trust, Elena explained. He started working more, dating less, building walls around his heart. But with you, those walls came down immediately. I could see it. That evening, alone in the penthouse, Naomi found herself thinking about Elena's words. She was preparing a simple dinner of pasta and salad when her phone rang. Cameron's name appeared on the screen. Hi, she answered, unsure of the protocol for phone calls and their arrangement. Hi. I just wanted to check in, see how your first day went. His voice sounded tired, and she could hear airport noise in the background. It went fine. I visited your mother during lunch and she's doing really well. Dr. James says her numbers are the best they've been in months. That's wonderful news. There was genuine relief in Cameron's voice. Did she ask about me? I told her you were traveling. She said you worked too much and that I should make sure you slow down. Naomi smiled despite herself. Cameron chuckled, a sound she hadn't heard from him before. She's been telling me that for years. Maybe she'll listen if it comes from you. I doubt I have that much influence. You'd be surprised, Cameron said quietly. My mother is an excellent judge of character, and she's already decided you're exactly what our family needs. There was something in his tone that made Naomi wonder if he was talking about more than just his mother's opinion. Cameron, she said carefully, what happened with Patricia? Silence stretched between them for several seconds. My mother told you about her? Just briefly. I'm sorry if it's too personal to ask about. No, you should probably know. We dated for 2 years. I thought we were serious, thought maybe I'd finally found someone who could understand my lifestyle. Then she met my business partner, who happens to own a yacht and 3 vacation homes. She decided she could do better. I'm sorry, Naomi said and meant it. That must have been painful. It was educational, Cameron replied, but she could hear the old hurt beneath his casual tone. It taught me that most people have a price, and that love is usually conditional on circumstances. That's a pretty cynical way to look at relationships. It's a realistic way, Cameron corrected. Which is why our arrangement makes sense. We both know exactly what we're getting and what we're giving up. No false expectations, no devastating surprises. After they hung up, Naomi sat on the living room couch, looking out at the city lights and thinking about what Cameron had said. His perspective on love was so different from her own, shaped by betrayal and disappointment instead of hope and possibility. But as she wore Elena's ring and lived in his home and participated in this elaborate deception, she had to wonder if maybe Cameron's cynical approach to relationships was actually more honest than her own romantic ideals. After all, here she was, married to a man for money, pretending to love him for the sake of a dying woman's peace of mind. Maybe the only difference between her and Patricia was that Naomi was more honest about her motivations. The thought disturbed her more than she cared to admit. By the end of her first week living in Cameron's penthouse, Naomi had established a comfortable routine. She would wake up early, make coffee, and often find notes Cameron had left on the kitchen counter with updates about Elena's condition or reminders about upcoming family obligations. He was always gone by the time she got up, either at the gym or already at the office. But that Friday evening she came home from her hospital shift to find him in the kitchen, wearing dark blue jeans and a forest green sweater, stirring something that smelled absolutely wonderful on the stove. You cook? She asked, dropping her purse on the marble counter. Cameron looked up, and she noticed that his usually perfect hair was slightly messed up, with one stubborn curl falling across his forehead. I used to cook all the time before I got so busy with work. I thought maybe tonight we could eat together and talk about our story. Our story? My mother is being discharged tomorrow, Cameron explained, turning back to the pan of what appeared to be chicken in a rich red sauce. She wants to have dinner with us this weekend, and we need to make sure we have consistent answers about how we met, how I proposed, all the details that couples would naturally know about each other. Naomi washed her hands at the kitchen sink, trying to ignore how domestic this felt. That makes sense. What are you making? It smells incredible. Chicken with mole sauce. It's one of my mother's recipes. Cameron glanced at her with what might have been embarrassment. I wanted to practice before I try to cook for her. She's very particular about her mole. Can I help? Naomi asked, genuinely curious about the cooking process. You could make the rice. The ingredients are on the counter there. They worked side by side in the spacious kitchen, and Naomi found herself relaxing in a way she hadn't since this arrangement began. Cameron moved confidently around the space, tasting and adjusting seasonings, explaining the complex process of making mole from scratch. My grandmother taught my mother, who taught me, he said, adding what looked like a dozen different spices to the sauce. It takes hours to do it properly, but this is a simplified version that still tastes authentic. My mother always said that recipes passed down through families carry more than just instructions, Naomi commented, stirring the rice. They carry love and history and connection. Exactly, Cameron agreed, and when he smiled at her, Naomi felt that same unexpected flutter in her chest she'd experienced during their phone call. Over dinner, they began constructing their fictional love story. Cameron had suggested they stick as close to the truth as possible to make it easier to remember. We met at the hospital when you were visiting your mother, Naomi said, taking notes on a yellow legal pad. That part is true. But instead of your business proposal, maybe you asked me for coffee to thank me for being kind to Elena. And I was immediately struck by your compassion and intelligence, Cameron added, twirling pasta around his fork. Plus you're beautiful, which wouldn't be hard for people to believe as a reason I'd be interested. The compliment caught Naomi off guard. Thank you, she said, feeling heat rise in her cheeks. It's just the truth, Cameron replied matter-of-factly. If we're going to sell this, we might as well acknowledge the obvious. They decided that their relationship had progressed quickly because of Elena's illness, that Cameron had realized life was too short to waste time, and that he'd proposed after just 6 weeks of dating. What kind of proposal? Naomi asked, her pen poised over the pad. Cameron considered this seriously. Something simple but meaningful. Maybe I took you to the place where we had our first real conversation outside the hospital. Where would that be? There's a small park about 2 blocks from the medical center. It has a fountain and some benches under old oak trees. I could have taken you there after one of your shifts, told you I couldn't imagine my life without you, and asked you to marry me. The story sounded so plausible, so romantic, that for a moment Naomi could almost picture it happening. And I said yes because I had fallen in love with your kindness to your mother and your dedication to family. Perfect, Cameron said, making a note. Simple, believable, and romantic enough to satisfy my mother's expectations. After dinner, Cameron suggested they watch a movie together to continue building their comfort level with each other. They settled on the large sectional sofa in the living room, a bowl of popcorn between them, watching an old romantic comedy that neither of them seemed particularly interested in. Can I ask you something personal? Naomi said during a quiet moment in the film. Sure. What do you actually want from your life? I mean, beyond making your mother happy. What would make Cameron Torres truly fulfilled? Cameron was quiet for so long that Naomi thought he might not answer. When he finally spoke, his voice was thoughtful and slightly sad. I used to think I wanted to build an empire. Hotels, restaurants, maybe expand into real estate development. I wanted to be so successful that no one could ever question my worth or dismiss me as unimportant. And now I wonder if I've spent so much time building walls and accumulating achievements that I've forgotten how to just be happy. My mother keeps asking about grandchildren, and I realize I've never even imagined having a family. The idea of being responsible for someone else's happiness, of being trusted with that kind of love, terrifies me. Naomi studied his profile in the soft light from the television. That's why you prefer business arrangements to real relationships. They feel safer. Exactly, Cameron said, meeting her gaze. What about you? What do you want from life? I want to make a difference, Naomi said immediately. I love nursing because I get to help people during some of the scariest moments of their lives. But I also want what your mother wants for you. I want someone to love who loves me back, a family, children who know they're treasured. And you're willing to sacrifice 6 months of your life, potentially damage your reputation, and lie to a sweet old woman to save your mother's life. Yes, Naomi said without hesitation. I would do anything for my mother. Anything. Even this, Cameron said softly. Even this. They sat in comfortable silence for a while, the movie playing unwatched in the background. Finally, Cameron turned to face her completely. I want you to know that I respect what you're doing, he said. I know this can't be easy, living with a stranger, pretending to feel things you don't feel. If there's ever anything I can do to make this arrangement more comfortable for you, please tell me. Actually, Naomi said, there is something. Name it. Could we be friends? Real friends, I mean. Not just business partners pretending to be married. It might make this easier if we actually liked each other. Cameron smiled, the first completely genuine smile she'd seen from him. I'd like that very much. But I should warn you, I'm not very good at friendship. I tend to work too much and forget to stay in touch with people. Lucky for you, I'm very good at friendship, Naomi said, grinning back at him. I'll teach you. Do you think it's possible to fall in love with someone while pretending to be married to them? These two are about to find out that the line between fake and real might be blurrier than they expected. What do you think will happen when Elena comes home? Share your predictions in the comments and subscribe for the next chapter. As they settled back to finish the movie, Naomi realized that something had shifted between them that evening. The careful distance they'd maintained was still there, but underneath it, she could feel the beginning of something that felt surprisingly real. She looked down at Elena's ring on her finger and wondered if it was possible to fake something so completely that it eventually became true. Elena's homecoming was more elaborate than Naomi had expected. Cameron's older brother Miguel arrived from San Diego with his wife Carmen and their 2 young children, and suddenly the quiet penthouse was filled with family, laughter, and rapid-fire Spanish conversations that Naomi could only partially follow. Miguel Torres was taller than Cameron, with the same dark hair but a more relaxed demeanor. He wore a bright red button-down shirt and greeted Naomi with a warm hug that felt genuinely welcoming. So you're the woman who finally got my little brother to settle down, Miguel said with a teasing grin. I thought this day would never come. Miguel, be nice, scolded Carmen, a petite woman with kind eyes and curly black hair. She pulled Naomi aside while the men set up a hospital bed in Elena's apartment across town. Elena has been talking about you nonstop. She's so happy Cameron found someone who understands the importance of family. The two-bedroom apartment that Elena called home was warm and inviting, filled with family photographs, religious icons, and the kind of comfortable furniture that invited people to stay and visit. The walls were painted in soft yellows and oranges, and the kitchen smelled perpetually of cumin and garlic. "This is perfect for your recovery," Dr. James said, checking Elena's blood pressure in her own bedroom. "You'll be much more comfortable here than in the hospital, and having family nearby will be good for your emotional well-being." Elena was practically glowing with happiness. She wore a turquoise blouse and dark blue slacks, having insisted on getting fully dressed for her homecoming. Her color was better than Naomi had ever seen it, and she moved with an energy that seemed remarkable for someone who had been so ill just 2 weeks earlier. "Naomi, mi amor," Elena called from her favorite armchair in the living room. "Come sit with me and tell me about your mother. When do I get to meet her?" The question caught Naomi off guard. In all their planning, she and Cameron had never discussed introducing their families to each other. "She's been feeling a bit under the weather lately," Naomi said carefully. "But I know she's excited to meet you too. We should plan a dinner," Elena announced. "Both families together maybe next weekend. I want to properly welcome your mother into our family." Cameron and Naomi exchanged a quick glance across the room. This was exactly the kind of complication they hadn't anticipated. "That sounds wonderful, Mama," Cameron said smoothly. "Let's see how you're feeling next week before we plan anything too ambitious." But Elena was already making plans, her mind clearly energized by the prospect of family celebrations. "Carmen, you could bring your famous enchiladas. And Naomi, your mother could share one of her family recipes. It will be perfect." Later that evening, after Miguel's family had returned to their hotel and Elena had settled in for the night, Cameron and Naomi sat in the penthouse living room trying to figure out how to handle the dinner invitation. "Your mother seems like she's making a remarkable recovery," Naomi said, curled up in the corner of the sofa with a cup of herbal tea. "Better than anyone expected," Cameron agreed. He was wearing gray sweatpants and a navy blue t-shirt, looking more relaxed than she'd ever seen him. "Dr. James pulled me aside earlier and said Elena's progress is almost unprecedented for someone with her condition." "The power of happiness," Naomi murmured. "She really believes her son is settled and loved. It's given her a reason to fight." "Which is exactly what we hoped would happen," Cameron said. "But now she wants to integrate our families, plan celebrations, probably start hinting about grandchildren soon." Naomi felt a familiar twist of guilt in her stomach. "We have to tell my mother about this arrangement if Elena insists on meeting her. What do you think she'll say?" "I honestly don't know." Naomi sipped her tea, thinking about Grace Washington's strong moral compass and fierce protective instincts. "She raised me to always tell the truth and help people when I can. This situation violates the first principle to accomplish the second." Cameron was quiet for a moment, staring out at the city lights. "What if we didn't tell her? You want me to lie to my mother too?" "I want you to think about whether the truth would serve any purpose except making everyone feel worse," Cameron said carefully. "Your mother is fighting cancer. She has enough stress in her life without worrying about the ethical implications of our arrangement. If she meets Elena and sees how happy and healthy this has made her, maybe the details of how we got here don't matter as much as the results." Naomi considered this. Her mother was incredibly intuitive about relationships, but she was also dealing with the exhaustion and mental fog that came with chemotherapy treatments. It was possible that she wouldn't look too closely at the specifics of Cameron and Naomi's whirlwind romance. "There's another problem," Naomi said. "Elena is getting better so much faster than anyone expected. What if she recovers completely in the next month or two? We agreed to 6 months, but that was based on the assumption that she would need time to gradually improve. At this rate, she'll be back to full health soon, and then what's our exit strategy?" Cameron ran a hand through his hair, a gesture Naomi had noticed he made when he was thinking hard about something. "I've been wondering the same thing. Part of me is thrilled that she's doing so well, but part of me is terrified about what happens when we have to break her heart by ending this marriage." "Maybe we don't have to end it dramatically," Naomi suggested. "Maybe we could gradually transition to being friends, say we realized we're better as companions than spouses." "You think she'd believe that? After seeing how happy she thinks we are?" Before Naomi could answer, Cameron's phone rang. Elena's name appeared on the screen and they both tensed. "Mama? Is everything okay?" Cameron answered on speakerphone. "Oh, mi amor, I'm fine, I'm wonderful. Elena's voice came through clearly, bubbling with excitement. I just had the most marvelous idea. You know how I've been feeling so much better, so much stronger? Yes, and we're so grateful for that. Well, I think we should plan a big celebration for your 1-month wedding anniversary. Something special, maybe at that nice restaurant you took me to for my birthday last year. We could invite Miguel and Carmen, Naomi's mother, maybe some friends from church. Cameron and Naomi stared at each other in panic. Their 1-month anniversary would be in 3 weeks, and the idea of a public celebration with extended family and friends was terrifying. That's very thoughtful, Mama, but you don't need to go to all that trouble. It's no trouble, it's joy, Elena insisted. I have so much energy now, and I want to celebrate my son's happiness. You two have given me the most wonderful gift by finding each other. Let me give you a gift in return. After they hung up, Cameron and Naomi sat in silence for several minutes. We're in deeper than we thought, Naomi said finally. Much deeper, Cameron agreed. But did you hear how excited she sounded? How strong her voice was. 3 weeks ago, she could barely get through a conversation without becoming breathless. So we're doing the right thing even if it's getting more complicated. I think so, Cameron said. But I also think we need to be prepared for the possibility that this arrangement might last longer than 6 months. If Elena stays this healthy and this happy, it could be very difficult to find a good time to end it. The weight of that possibility settled over Naomi like a heavy blanket. When she had signed the contract, 6 months had seemed like a finite, manageable period of time. But the idea of potentially living this lie for years felt overwhelming. Cameron, she said quietly, what if we never find a good time to end it? What if Elena stays healthy for decades and we're stuck in this fake marriage forever? Then I guess we'd better make sure we can live with it, Cameron replied. Because the alternative is breaking the heart of a woman who trusts us completely. As Naomi went to bed that night, Elena's ring felt heavier on her finger than ever before. She was beginning to understand that some lies, once started, take on a life of their own and become impossible to stop without destroying everything good that has grown from them. 3 weeks into Elena's recovery, Naomi found herself looking forward to coming home to Cameron's penthouse in a way that had nothing to do with their business arrangement. He had started cooking dinner several times a week, and they had fallen into an easy routine of sharing meals, watching movies, and talking about their days. It was becoming harder to remember that their relationship was supposed to be fake. How was your mother's oncology appointment today? Cameron asked as they sat down to dinner on a Wednesday evening. He had made grilled salmon with rice and vegetables, and the table was set with actual cloth napkins and wine glasses. Good news actually, Naomi said, accepting a glass of white wine. Dr. Rodriguez says the latest scans show the tumors are shrinking faster than expected. The experimental treatment is working. That's wonderful, Cameron said, and the genuine relief in his voice warmed Naomi's heart. Over the past few weeks, he had asked about Grace's condition regularly, and Naomi could tell he was sincerely concerned about her mother's well-being. She asked about you again, Naomi added with a small smile. She wants to know when she gets to meet the man who swept her daughter off her feet so quickly. And what did you tell her? That you've been busy with work but looking forward to meeting her soon. Naomi took a sip of wine, gathering courage for what she needed to say next. Cameron, I think we should arrange that dinner Elena wanted. Both our mothers are doing well enough now, and the longer we wait, the more suspicious it might seem. Cameron nodded slowly. You're right. Besides, my mother calls me every other day with new plans for the anniversary celebration. If we don't give her something to focus on, she'll probably rent out a banquet hall. They spent the rest of dinner planning logistics for the family dinner, but Naomi found herself distracted by the way Cameron's eyes crinkled when he laughed at something she said, or how he absently reached across the table to refill her wine glass without being asked. These small acts of consideration had become natural between them, and sometimes Naomi caught herself forgetting that he was just being a good actor. After dinner, they settled in the living room to watch the news, but Cameron seemed restless, checking his phone repeatedly and running his hands through his hair. Everything okay? Naomi asked during a commercial break. I got a call from a reporter today, Cameron said, setting his phone aside. Someone from Phoenix Business Journal wants to do a feature story about successful young entrepreneurs and their personal lives. They specifically mentioned wanting to include information about my recent marriage. Naomi felt her stomach drop. What did you tell them? That I prefer to keep my personal life private, but they were persistent. They said it would be a positive story, focusing on how successful business people balance work and family. They want to interview both of us and possibly take some photos. Can you refuse? I could, but it might seem strange. Most people in my position would be happy for the publicity. Cameron looked at her seriously. The question is whether you're comfortable with it. Once we do something this public, there's no taking it back. Naomi considered this. A magazine article would make their marriage seem more real to Elena and their families, but it would also create a permanent record of their deception that could potentially cause problems later. What do you think we should do? She asked. Honestly, I think we should do it. My mother would be so proud to see us featured in a magazine, and it would give her something to show off to her friends at church. Plus, it might help establish our story more firmly in case anyone ever questions the timing of our relationship. Before Naomi could respond, Cameron's phone rang. Elena's name appeared on the screen and Cameron answered immediately. Mama, hi. How are you feeling tonight? Oh, Mijo, I feel wonderful. I walked to the grocery store today, can you believe it? Just 3 weeks ago I could barely get out of bed, and now I have enough energy to shop for groceries. That's incredible, Cameron said, putting the phone on speaker so Naomi could hear. Dr. James must be amazed by your progress. She says I'm a miracle patient, Elena said proudly. And you know what? I think she's right. I think having something to live for, having my son happily married, has healed my heart in ways that medicine never could. Naomi felt tears prick at her eyes. Elena's voice was so strong, so full of life and joy, that it was impossible not to be moved by her transformation. I have exciting news, Elena continued. I've been talking to Father Martinez about planning a special mass to celebrate your marriage and my recovery. He thinks it's a beautiful idea, a testament to the power of love and family. We could do it next month, invite everyone we know. Cameron and Naomi looked at each other in alarm. A religious ceremony with their entire extended community felt like taking the deception to a whole new level. Mama, that's very thoughtful, but isn't that a little elaborate? Cameron said carefully. Elaborate? My only son finds true love and his mother recovers from a serious heart condition, and you think celebrating is elaborate? Elena laughed. This is the most important thing that has ever happened to our family. After Elena hung up, Cameron and Naomi sat in stunned silence. A mass, Naomi said finally. She wants to have a religious ceremony celebrating our fake marriage. In front of the entire congregation, Cameron added. People who have known my family for decades. Cameron, I can't do that. I can't stand up in a church and accept prayers and blessings for a relationship that doesn't exist. That feels like more than just lying to your mother. That feels like lying to God. Cameron was quiet for a long moment. What if it doesn't have to be lying? He said softly. What do you mean? I mean, what if we stopped pretending that this is just business? Cameron turned to face her fully. Naomi, I think I'm falling in love with you. The words hung in the air between them like a confession and a question all at once. Naomi's heart started beating so fast she could hear it in her ears. Cameron. I know this complicates everything, he said quickly. I know it's not what we agreed to. But these past few weeks, living with you, getting to know you, seeing how kind you are to my mother and how dedicated you are to your own family, I can't help how I feel. Naomi stared at him, trying to process what he was saying. You think you're falling in love with me? I know I am. I look forward to coming home to you. I find myself wanting to tell you about my day, wanting to know what you're thinking, wanting to take care of you the way you take care of everyone else. Cameron reached for her hands. I know this wasn't part of our deal, but maybe it could be. And what happens when your mother gets completely better and expects us to stay married forever? Naomi asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Then maybe we do, Cameron said simply. Maybe we stop calling it fake and start calling it real. Naomi looked down at their joined hands, at Elena's ring catching the light from the table lamp. Cameron, I'm scared. Scared of what? Scared that you're confusing gratitude with love. Scared that I'm doing the same thing. We're living in this bubble where I'm helping your mother and you're helping mine, and maybe what we're feeling isn't real love but just relief and appreciation. Cameron was quiet for a moment, considering her words. Maybe you're right, he said finally. But maybe the reason we've been able to convince everyone else that we're in love is because we actually are, and we just haven't been willing to admit it to ourselves. Before Naomi could respond, Cameron leaned forward and kissed her. Unlike their wedding kiss, which had been brief and ceremonial, this kiss was soft and searching and completely real. When they broke apart, Naomi felt dizzy and confused and more alive than she had in months. Think about it, Cameron said gently. Think about whether what we're feeling might be worth exploring, whether the best way to stop lying to my mother might be to stop lying to ourselves. As Naomi went to bed that night, she lay awake staring at the ceiling and trying to sort through her emotions. Was it possible that she had fallen in love with Cameron without realizing it? Was it possible that their fake marriage could become real without destroying the very thing they had been trying to protect? Or was she just setting herself up for the kind of heartbreak that would make Patricia's betrayal look simple by comparison? The family dinner that Elena had been planning for weeks finally arrived on a Saturday evening, and Naomi felt like she was preparing for a performance where the stakes couldn't be higher. She stood in front of her bedroom mirror, adjusting the red dress Cameron had bought for the occasion, trying to calm her nerves. Grace Washington would be meeting the Torres family for the first time, and Naomi still hadn't decided whether to tell her mother the truth about the marriage arrangement. "You look beautiful," Cameron said from the doorway. He wore a charcoal gray suit with a blue tie, and his hair was perfectly styled. But Naomi could see the tension in his shoulders, the same nervousness she was feeling. "Are you ready for this?" she asked. "As ready as I can be for introducing my fake wife to my real family while my real fake wife introduces her real mother to my fake real relationship," Cameron said with a nervous laugh. "That sentence hurt my brain," Naomi said, but she was smiling despite her anxiety. They had been navigating the strange space between fake and real for the past week, ever since Cameron's confession of love. They hadn't discussed it further, but there had been moments of electric awareness between them, moments where Naomi caught him looking at her with an expression that made her heart race. Elena's apartment was filled with the warm smells of home cooking and the sound of lively conversation when they arrived. Miguel and Carmen were already there with their children, and Grace Washington sat in Elena's favorite armchair, the two women clearly deep in animated discussion. "Naomi, mi amor," Elena called out, rising to embrace her. "Your mother is wonderful. We've been talking for an hour about children and grandchildren and the importance of family traditions." Grace Washington stood to hug her daughter, and Naomi was struck by how much stronger her mother looked. The experimental cancer treatment was working well, and Grace had gained back some of the weight she'd lost during the initial rounds of chemotherapy. She wore a beautiful purple dress that complemented her dark skin, and her smile was bright and genuinely happy. "Cameron," Grace said, turning to him with an appraising look. "So you're the man who convinced my daughter to marry him after 6 weeks of dating?" "Yes, ma'am," Cameron replied, and Naomi could hear the respect in his voice. "I know it was fast, but when you find the right person, time doesn't matter as much as the connection you feel." Grace said, studying his face intently. "And what kind of connection do you feel with my Naomi?" Cameron glanced at Naomi, and something passed between them that felt entirely real. "I feel like I've found the person I want to build a life with," he said quietly. "Someone who makes me want to be a better man, someone whose happiness matters more to me than my own." Naomi felt her breath catch. If he was acting, he was doing an incredible job. Dinner was a lively affair, with Elena's mole chicken as the centerpiece and Carmen's enchiladas as a side dish. The conversation flowed easily between English and Spanish, with Miguel translating for Grace when needed. The children, ages 6 and 8, provided entertainment with their stories about school and their excited questions about when Cameron and Naomi would have children of their own. "Uncle Cameron, when are you going to have babies?" 6-year-old Sophia asked directly, causing everyone to laugh and Cameron to nearly choke on his wine. "Sophia, that's not polite to ask," Carmen scolded gently. "But Abuela Elena said she wants great-grandchildren soon," Sophia protested. "She showed me the baby blanket she's already started knitting." Elena blushed but didn't deny it. "A grandmother can hope," she said with a shrug. After dinner, while the men cleaned up in the kitchen and the children watched a movie, the women gathered in the living room for coffee and Elena's famous flan. "Naomi," Elena said, settling beside her on the couch, "I have something for you." She pulled out a small wrapped box. This belonged to Cameron's great-grandmother. "I've been saving it for the woman he married." Inside the box was a delicate gold necklace with a small pendant featuring a tiny diamond surrounded by intricate metalwork. "Elena, this is beautiful, but I can't accept something so precious," Naomi protested. "Of course you can. You're family now." Elena fastened the necklace around Naomi's neck. "Besides, it brings good luck for marriages and for having children." Grace watched this exchange with interest, her experienced mother's eyes taking in every detail of the interaction. Later, as they were preparing to leave, Grace pulled Naomi aside in the hallway. "Can I speak with you privately for a moment?" Grace asked. They stepped into Elena's bedroom and Grace closed the door gently. "Naomi, sweetheart, I need to ask you something, and I want you to tell me the truth." Naomi's heart pounded. "What is it, Mama? Are you truly happy in this marriage?" The question wasn't what Naomi had expected, and it threw her off balance. What do you mean?" I mean that I've watched you your whole life, and I know when you're genuinely happy versus when you're putting on a brave face. Tonight, I saw moments where you looked at Cameron like you're falling in love with him, and I saw moments where you looked terrified. I need to know which one is real. Naomi sat down on the edge of Elena's bed, the weight of weeks of deception suddenly feeling unbearable. It's complicated, Mama? Complicated how? For a moment, Naomi considered telling her mother everything. About the contract, about Elena's illness, about the money that was paying for Grace's experimental treatments. But then she thought about the stress it would add to her mother's life, the moral burden it would place on her during her own recovery. Complicated because I didn't expect to have real feelings, Naomi said instead, which was true even if it wasn't the whole truth. I married him for practical reasons, but now I think I might actually be falling in love with him. Grace studied her daughter's face for a long moment. Practical reasons like what? Like financial security, like the fact that he clearly adores his family and would be a good provider and father. Naomi met her mother's eyes. I know that sounds cold, but Cameron and I were both very honest about our motivations from the beginning. We both wanted marriage and family, we were both attracted to each other, and we both felt like we could build something good together. And now I think what started as a practical arrangement might be turning into something real, Naomi said softly. But I'm scared because I don't know if he feels the same way, or if he's just grateful that I'm helping him make his mother happy. Grace was quiet for several minutes, processing this information. Naomi, I've been married twice, and I can tell you that how a marriage begins matters less than how the people in it choose to treat each other every day, Grace said finally. I loved your father desperately, but that passion wasn't enough to save our marriage when times got hard. My second marriage to Robert started as companionship and grew into deep love over time. So you think I made the right choice? I think you made a choice that could be right if you're both committed to making it work, Grace said. But I also think you need to be honest with Cameron about your feelings, and you need to make sure he's being honest with you about his. As they rejoined the family in the living room, Naomi felt both relieved and more confused than ever. Her mother hadn't suspected the true nature of her arrangement with Cameron, but she had picked up on the emotional complexity of their situation. The ride home was quiet, both Cameron and Naomi lost in their own thoughts about the evening. Your mother is wonderful, Cameron said finally as they rode the elevator up to the penthouse. I can see where you get your strength and your moral compass from. She likes you, Naomi replied. But she's worried about whether we're being honest with each other about our feelings. Cameron stopped walking as they reached their front door. And are we? Naomi looked at him, this man who had been a stranger 6 weeks ago and who now felt like the most important person in her world. I don't know, she said honestly. Are we? Cameron unlocked the door but didn't move to go inside. Naomi, what I told you last week about falling in love with you. That wasn't gratitude or confusion or wishful thinking. That was me finally admitting something I've been feeling for weeks. And what if Elena gets completely better and doesn't need our marriage to give her hope anymore? What if the practical reasons for our arrangement disappear? Would you still want to be married to me then? Yes, Cameron said without hesitation. I would want to be married to you because I love you, not because my mother needs us to be married. The words hung between them like a bridge Naomi could either cross or walk away from. Cameron, she said softly, I think I love you too. But I'm terrified that we're building something real on a foundation of lies, and that it will all come crashing down when the truth comes out. Then maybe it's time to stop lying, Cameron said. Maybe it's time to tell my mother the truth about how this started and let her decide whether she can forgive us. The idea of confessing everything to Elena filled Naomi with dread, but she also felt a sense of relief at the possibility of finally being honest. What if she's so hurt by our deception that it affects her recovery? Naomi asked. What if living this lie for the rest of our lives destroys any chance we have of building something real together? Cameron countered. As they stood there in the hallway, still wearing Elena's ring and great-grandmother's necklace, Naomi realized they had reached a crossroads that would determine not just the future of their arrangement, but the future of their hearts. The moment Naomi had been dreading arrived on a Tuesday afternoon when she least expected it. She had finished an early shift at the hospital and decided to surprise Elena with a visit, bringing fresh flowers and homemade soup. She used the key Elena had insisted she take, calling out softly as she entered the apartment. Elena? It's Naomi. I brought you some. She stopped abruptly when she heard Cameron's voice coming from the kitchen, along with another voice she didn't recognize. Moving quietly, she could hear snippets of conversation that made her blood run cold. The contract clearly states 6 months, the unfamiliar voice was saying. After that, you're free to dissolve the arrangement however you see fit. It's more complicated than that now, Cameron replied, his voice strained. My mother's recovery has been remarkable, but she's also become very attached to Naomi. Ending this suddenly could damage her health again. That's not really my concern, the other voice said. My concern is making sure all the financial arrangements are properly documented. The $500,000 has been transferred as agreed, and your wife has fulfilled her obligations admirably. Naomi felt the world tilt around her. Elena was standing in the doorway between the kitchen and living room, her face white as paper, her hand pressed to her chest. Elena, Naomi whispered, dropping the flowers and soup as she rushed toward the older woman. But Elena stepped back, her dark eyes filled with a pain so deep it was physically painful to witness. $500,000, Elena said quietly, her accented voice shaking. You paid my daughter-in-law $500,000. The conversation in the kitchen stopped abruptly, and Cameron appeared in the doorway, his face going pale when he saw both women standing there. Mama, please let me explain. Explain what? Elena's voice was getting stronger, fueled by hurt and betrayal. Explain how you hired an actress to pretend to love you? Explain how you lied to me while I was dying in a hospital bed. You weren't dying, Cameron said desperately. You were sick, but the doctor said you could recover if you had something to hope for. So you gave me false hope, Elena interrupted, tears streaming down her face. You let me believe that my son had found love, that I would have grandchildren, that our family was complete. You let me plan celebrations and knit baby blankets and thank God for answering my prayers. Naomi felt like she couldn't breathe. Elena, please, Cameron's right about your recovery. You are so much better now, so much stronger. Because I thought I had a reason to live, Elena said, her voice breaking. Because I thought my son was happy and settled and loved. But it was all a lie. The stranger from the kitchen appeared, a well-dressed man in his 50s carrying a briefcase. I think I should leave, he said awkwardly. Cameron, we can finish this conversation later. After he left, the three of them stood in Elena's living room, the silence heavy with years' worth of broken trust and shattered dreams. How long? Elena asked finally, sitting down heavily in her armchair. How long were you planning to keep lying to me? Cameron sat down across from her, his hands shaking slightly. 6 months originally. But Mama, something changed. What started as an arrangement became real. I really do love Naomi and I think she loves me too. Elena looked at Naomi with eyes that held more disappointment than anger. Is that true, Mija? Do you love my son, or are you just a very good actress? I don't know, Naomi admitted, her voice barely above a whisper. I know that I signed a contract to help you recover and to pay for my mother's cancer treatments. But I also know that somewhere along the way my feelings became real. I care about Cameron and I care about you, more than I ever expected to. Your mother has cancer, Elena said slowly. And my son's money is paying for her treatment. Yes. Elena was quiet for a long time, staring at her hands folded in her lap. When she finally looked up, her eyes were dry but infinitely sad. Do you know what the worst part is? She said quietly. The worst part is that it worked. I did recover because I had hope. I did fight harder because I thought I had a future to live for. You gave me exactly what I needed, even though it was based on a lie. Elena, Naomi said, kneeling beside her chair, your recovery isn't based on a lie. Your recovery is based on love. Cameron's love for you was real, even if our marriage wasn't. He was willing to do whatever it took to give you a reason to fight, and that love is what healed you. And your mother? Elena asked. Is she really getting better because of the money from this arrangement? Yes, Naomi said honestly. The experimental treatment is working. The tumors are shrinking. Elena nodded slowly. So 2 mothers are alive because of this deception. Elena, I know we hurt you, Cameron said, his voice rough with emotion. I know we broke your trust in the worst possible way. But please don't let our mistakes undo all the progress you've made. Please don't let this setback affect your health. You think I'm going to have another heart attack because I'm upset? Elena asked with a bitter laugh. Cameron, I'm stronger now than I've been in years. This news is devastating, but it's not going to kill me. She stood up and walked to the window, looking out at the street where children were playing in the afternoon sun. I need time to think, she said without turning around. I need time to figure out how I feel about all of this, about both of you, about what happens next. Elena, please, Naomi started. No, Elena said firmly. You both made choices that affected my life without asking me. Now I need to make some choices of my own, and I need space to do that. Cameron and Naomi left Elena's apartment in silence, both of them feeling like they had just witnessed the destruction of something precious and irreplaceable. "She hates us," Naomi said as they sat in Cameron's car in the parking lot. "She has every right to," Cameron replied. "We manipulated her emotions when she was at her most vulnerable. But we also saved her life. Did we? Or did we just postpone the heartbreak until she was strong enough to survive it?" Naomi looked at the ring on her finger, Elena's family heirloom that now felt like a symbol of their deception rather than their connection. "What do we do now?" she asked. "I don't know," Cameron said honestly. "I think we have to give her time and space to process this, and then we have to accept whatever decision she makes about whether she can forgive us." "And what about us?" Naomi asked quietly. "What about what we said about our feelings being real?" Cameron was quiet for a long moment, staring at Elena's apartment building. "I meant what I said about loving you," he said finally. "But I understand if you can't trust those feelings now. Everything between us started with a lie, and maybe that poisons everything that came after. Or maybe," Naomi said softly, "the fact that real love grew out of fake circumstances proves that what we feel is strong enough to survive the truth." Cameron turned to look at her, hope and uncertainty warring in his dark eyes. "Do you really believe that?" "I want to," Naomi said. "But first we need to find out if Elena can ever forgive us. Because if we destroyed her trust forever, I don't know how either of us can live with that." As they drove home to the penthouse where they had learned to be a family, Naomi realized that their biggest test wasn't whether their love was real. It was whether their love was strong enough to bear the weight of the pain they had caused the woman who had trusted them with her heart. 5 days passed without any word from Elena, and they were the longest 5 days of Naomi's life. She moved through her hospital shifts like a zombie, barely able to concentrate on her patients. Cameron threw himself into work with desperate intensity, but she could see the pain in his eyes every time he looked at his phone, hoping for a call or text that never came. On Friday evening, Miguel called. "She wants to see all of us," he told Cameron while Naomi listened on speakerphone. "Sunday afternoon at her apartment. She says she has some things to say and she wants everyone there to hear them. That includes you, Naomi." "How does she seem?" Cameron asked anxiously. "Honestly? She seems stronger than I've ever seen her. Sad but strong. Like she's made some kind of peace with everything." Sunday afternoon arrived gray and overcast, with storm clouds gathering over Phoenix. Naomi wore a simple blue dress and Elena's necklace, which she hadn't been able to bring herself to take off despite everything. Cameron wore dark blue jeans and a white button-down shirt, looking nervous and exhausted. When they arrived at Elena's apartment, Miguel and Carmen were already there with their children, who were unusually quiet and subdued. Elena sat in her favorite chair, wearing a bright green blouse that brought out the color in her cheeks. Her hair was neatly styled and she wore lipstick, but her expression was serious and thoughtful. "Sit," she said simply, gesturing to the couch. "All of you." Cameron and Naomi sat together but carefully avoided touching, unsure of what boundaries existed between them now. Miguel and Carmen took the love seat, holding hands in a show of solidarity. "I've spent 5 days thinking about what you did," Elena began, her voice steady and clear. "I've thought about why you did it, how it affected me, and what it means for our family going forward." She paused, looking directly at Cameron. "Mijo, what you did was wrong. You lied to me when I was vulnerable and afraid. You manipulated my emotions to achieve what you thought was best for my health, without giving me the choice to decide for myself how to handle my illness." Cameron's face crumpled with guilt and remorse. "Mama, I'm so sorry." "I'm not finished," Elena said firmly. "What you did was wrong, but I understand why you did it. You watched me getting weaker and sadder and you were desperate to help. You saw how happy I became when I thought you were settled and loved, and you wanted to give me that happiness." She turned to Naomi. "And you, Mija. You agreed to deceive me to save your mother's life. You let me believe you loved my son when you were really just fulfilling a contract." Naomi felt tears sliding down her cheeks. "Elena, I never meant to hurt you. And my feelings for Cameron became real, I swear they did." "I believe you," Elena said quietly. "I've watched you both these past weeks and I've seen something grow between you that was definitely not acting." She stood up and walked to the window, the same place she had stood 5 days ago when their world had fallen apart. "Here's what I've realized," she continued. "Yes, you lied to me about how your relationship started. But everything else was real. Cameron really did find someone who could love our family. Naomi really did become like a daughter to me. The happiness I felt, the strength I found, the hope that carried me through my recovery, all of that was based on real connections and real care. She turned back to face them. I also realized something else. If Cameron had come to me and said, "Mama, I want to hire someone to pretend to be my wife so you'll have hope and get better," what do you think I would have said? You would have said no, Cameron said quietly. Exactly. I would have been insulted and hurt that you thought I needed false hope to survive. But you know what? I did need hope. I was giving up, losing my will to fight, until I believed my son had found happiness. So maybe you knew me better than I knew myself. Elena walked over to where Naomi sat and gently touched her face. And you, mi amor. You agreed to this arrangement to save your mother's life. Do you think I can judge you for loving your mother enough to make such a sacrifice? When I found out that Grace's cancer treatment was being paid for with money from this arrangement, my first thought wasn't anger. It was gratitude that at least some good came from this situation. So you forgive us? Cameron asked, hardly daring to hope. I forgive you because I love you both, Elena said simply. But more than that, I'm grateful to you. Grateful? Naomi was confused. Naomi, you gave me my son back. Before you came into his life, Cameron was married to his work, afraid to love anyone, convinced that all relationships were just business transactions waiting to fail. But I watched him with you these past weeks, and I saw him become the man I always knew he could be. Gentle, caring, protective, happy. She sat down between them on the couch. And Cameron, you gave me a daughter. Real or fake, the marriage brought Naomi into our family, and she has been a blessing in every way. She cared for me when I was sick, she brought joy into this house, she loved all of us with an open heart. Elena took both of their hands in hers. So here's what I propose. You both started this arrangement for practical reasons, but you've discovered real love along the way. The question now is what you want to do about it. What do you mean? Cameron asked. I mean that your contract is probably almost finished, and you're going to have to decide whether you want to stay married because you choose to be together, or whether you want to get divorced and go back to your separate lives. Naomi and Cameron looked at each other across Elena's small frame, both of them realizing that this was the moment of truth they had been avoiding. But before you decide, Elena continued, I want you to know that you have my blessing either way. If you choose to make this marriage real, I will be the happiest mother in the world. If you choose to end it and remain friends, I will understand and respect that decision. The most important thing is that you're both honest about what you want. She stood up again, smoothing down her green blouse. Miguel, Carmen, I want you to take the children to the park for an hour. Cameron and Naomi need some time alone to talk. After the others left, Cameron and Naomi sat on Elena's couch in silence for several minutes, processing everything she had said. She's incredible, Naomi said finally. How did she manage to forgive us so completely? She's been through enough hardship in her life to know that love is more important than pride, Cameron replied. She's always been wise that way. Cameron, Naomi said, turning to face him fully, what do you want? Really, truly, if there were no contracts or obligations or family expectations, what would you want? Cameron reached for her hands and she let him take them. I want to marry you again, he said simply. For real this time. No contracts, no time limits, no practical arrangements. Just because I love you and I want to spend my life with you. Even though we started with a lie? Especially because we started with a lie and found truth anyway. Naomi, if we can fall in love while pretending to be married, imagine what we could build if we were really trying. Naomi looked down at Elena's ring on her finger, thinking about everything that had brought them to this moment. I want that too, she said softly. I want to marry you because I choose you, not because we need each other. Cameron smiled, the first genuinely happy expression she had seen from him in days. So we'll do it right this time? Real vows, real commitment, real marriage? Yes, Naomi said, but we do it Elena's way. Open and honest, with both our family's blessings, with nothing hidden. Cameron kissed her then, and it felt like the first kiss of their real relationship, the first moment of their actual love story. When Elena returned an hour later with Miguel's family, she took one look at their faces and started crying happy tears. So, she asked, though she clearly already knew the answer. Will you help us plan a real wedding this time? Cameron asked. One where we mean every word we say? Oh, Mijo, Elena said, pulling them both into a fierce hug. I thought you'd never ask. 6 months later, Naomi and Cameron Torres stood in the same small church where Elena attended Mass, surrounded by both their families and friends from the hospital and Cameron's business. Grace Washington, her cancer now in complete remission, walked Naomi down the aisle. Elena sat in the front row, wiping away tears of joy as she watched her son marry the woman he truly loved. As they exchanged new rings and made new vows, this time meaning every word, Naomi realized that sometimes the most beautiful love stories begin with the most impossible circumstances. Their marriage had started as a business arrangement designed to save two dying women, but it had become something neither of them had ever dared to hope for. A real and lasting love built on truth, forgiveness, and the kind of hope that can heal any heart. When Father Martinez pronounced them husband and wife for the second time, and Cameron kissed her with all the love they had discovered along the way, Naomi knew that their story was just beginning. And this time they would write it together with honesty and love leading the way. Elena had been right all along. Love really could conquer everything, even the lies that had brought them together in the first place. This is the power of love. It can transform even the most desperate arrangements into beautiful realities. Have you ever seen love grow from unexpected circumstances? Share your stories in the comments below and don't forget to subscribe for more heartwarming tales that prove love truly can conquer all.